seated. If you have your Bibles, turn me to Matthew chapter 11. I opened service with saying it, I'll say it again. We are going through the Bible this year, the New Testament, together so that every small group, every time we meet, that the group is always in the place that we're reading. And we're in the third week, which is Matthew chapters 11 through 15. And as we're pressing in and pushing through this week, I'm jumping right into this part. But to bring us up to speed to where we've been in Matthew, where we're at in Matthew, and by the way, short commercial break, that if you want to be a part of this, we have a prayer journal. We have the Abide 25 book that keeps us in it. In the back, when you're leaving today in the foyer, there's a QR code you can scan. I think they'll have it in the slide. That if you want to order a book and be with, we'd love for you to do this and be a part of it with us. So this is where we have been up to Matthew, right? So Matthew, it tells the genealogy of Jesus, showing us Jesus is king, the bloodline of David. It shares with us the birth of Jesus, showing that Jesus is fully God and fully human. We've been introduced to John the Baptist, who was the forerunner declaring Jesus as the Savior, deliverer. We see Jesus, His words of authority at the Sermon on the Mount. We see His works of authority with the miracles and power over demonic forces. And we've seen Jesus give His authority to the disciples. And this week, we pick up Matthew chapter 11. We pick up with John the Baptist in prison, right? John the Baptist is in prison because of King Herod, right? John the Baptist criticized the marriage of King Herod to his brother-in-law's wife. And we believe John the Baptist had been in prison for a little while when we pick it up in Matthew chapter 11, verse 2. And when John had heard in prison about the works of Christ, he sent 2 disciples and said to Jesus, "Are you the coming one, or do we look for another? Do we search for another? Are you the one, or should we search for another?" This is an honest question from a guy who's struggling with doubt and faith in what Jesus is doing. Right? How could John the Baptist doubt Jesus? How could John the Baptist even question Jesus? How could we ever doubt and question Jesus? I think we find ourselves in a battle of doubt with very similar reasons why John was. It's a limited perspective of what God is doing. There's difficult situations, and unmet expectations oftentimes leads us to a place of asking, Jesus, what are you doing? I'm struggling to believe here. Let's look at what happened with John and see if it's not paralleling some areas in our life where we've struggled to believe. John was in a difficult situation. He'd spent his life as Jesus' prophet in the wilderness. He'd proclaimed God's word with boldness, preparing the way of the Lord, pointing people to Jesus. But now, I want you to look now. Now John the Baptist is experiencing the shame of prison, hunger, physical torment, emotions, struggles, sitting in prison alone. I'm going to ask a question. Have you ever been in a difficult place and doubted Jesus knows truly where you are? I want you to look at me real quick. I want to ask this question. Have you ever found yourself in a difficult situation? Like John the Baptist, you've served Him. You know who He is. But have you ever found yourself in a place that because of the hard situation, it causes you to doubt, does Jesus know where I'm at? John the Baptist was in a hard situation. He also had unmet expectations, right? John the Baptist heard Jesus preach to prophesy what He was coming to do. He'd prophesied Isaiah chapter 61. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to preach the good tidings to the poor. He sent me to heal the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and the opening of the prison for those who are bound. John the Baptist had heard Him preach. I'm the one that's coming. I'm the one. I'm going to set the captives free, even those that are in prison. Have you ever struggled to doubt because there's unmet expectations of Jesus? I know you can, but you haven't. I'm still in this situation. John had limited perception of what God was doing. John simply didn't understand everything that was happening or actually not happening around him. That's why you see him send a couple of disciples and go, "Hey, I need your help, Jesus. I'm needing you to answer some questions." Matthew 11, verse 3, he asks, "Are you the one?" Are you the one? I'm wanting to know. Would you agree that it's often in challenging, difficult circumstances is when faith is hardest to come by? Anybody? Especially when you've been walking with Him. You know Him, you love Him, you're trying to serve Him, and then all of a sudden tragedy happens. Trials happen. Brokenness happens. Pains happens. Or better yet, nothing happens, and you're asking for God to do a work. You start thinking, God, where are you? Why is this happening? We need to realize and understand that the limited perspective that John the Baptist, he could only see limited. Look y'all, we're reading Matthew chapters 11 through 15. We get to see the outside. He's in prison, he can't see it. The perspective of what he can see is limited. Is it not that this is what happens with us? John had limited perspective of what God's doing, and so do we. My prayer for you, I've already said it today, my prayer is that you would see Jesus' truth in your life. Even when doubt creeps in, when your fear is greater than your faith, that you would be able to see, hear, sense, and know that God is doing a work in your life. That's why Jesus responds right here with John the Baptist with some insight and perspective, right? I love that Jesus, knowing, John, I know you can't see it, I'm just going to give you a little nugget right here. Matthew 11, look there with me, verse 4. Jesus answered and said to him, go tell John the things which you hear and see. He's limited. So tell him a little bit what you hear and see. The blind see, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have the gospel preached to them. Jesus ends the last thing that he ever says to John the Baptist like this. And tell him, blessed is he who is not offended by me. Another translation is to say it like this. Blessed is the one who doesn't stumble on my account. Blessed is the one that truly trusts in me, believes in me, even when it doesn't make sense. Make sure that you tell him blessed. The word blessed, we've already seen the Beatitudes. We've seen that blessed means happy, joyful. Then he says, make sure that you tell him, be happy in prison. I'm the one. Make sure that while you're in this situation, you are joyful in this very place. Joyful submission is what I'm calling you to, John the Baptist. It's a joyful submission. Jesus asking for joyful submission in John the Baptist's life, the disciples' life, and look at me, in your life, in my life. He's asking for a joyful submission. Jesus tells us at the end of Matthew chapter 11, I want you to keep going, 11 verse 28 through 30. I want you to see how this begins to continue to unfold. Jesus has just said, hey guys, there's a multitude that's listening. The disciples are there. He tells them, go tell John the Baptist, I'm the one. And then he comes back to them and says, by the way, John the Baptist is better than any preacher we've ever had. He's the one. He is a good guy. Here's what I want you all to hear and what John to know. Matthew chapters 11, 28 through 30. Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and lowly in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. We have a difficult situation, unmet expectation, and we have limited perspective. And Jesus says, continue to believe. Continue to joyfully submit. Rest in me. The response from Jesus seems odd when he says rest, right? Because what do we know about a yoke, right? A yoke is work. We know that there's this place that he says, rest in me. Okay, take my yoke. Yoke means work, right? A yoke is what goes over an animal, a beast of burden, an ox or something, usually connected to two. And there's this connection. What are you asking? Are you asking us to rest or to work? What do you need John to do? Is he asking me to rest or work? The answer is yes. So then what's the work that he's asking us to do? John chapter 6, verse 29 says, the work of God is that you believe in him who sent him. That's what Jesus said. You want to know what the work is? Rest in knowing I'm the one. I'm the one. John 15 says, Jesus says, you want to know what the work is? The work is to abide in me. So Jesus is saying to John, the multitude, to the disciples, and to you and me. This is what he's saying. Yes, I'm the one. The work is to joyfully submit, follow and believe, stay connected to me, rest in me. I've got this. So up to this point, I want you to hear and understand this is where we are. Has there ever been doubt in your life in what God is doing in your life? Has there ever been an area of your life where you're struggling to see this is your perfect plan? Here's what He asks us to do in those times. Believe that I'm the one. We see this played out in the rest of this week's reading. Matthew chapter 12, go with me there. 1 through 8, there's a little lengthy reading, but I want you to see this. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and the disciples were hungry, and they began to pluck heads of grain to eat. And when the Pharisees saw it, they said to Him, "Look, your disciples are doing what is not lawful to do on the Sabbath." But He said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he was hungry? And what those who were with him did? How they entered the house of God and ate the showbread which was not lawful for them to eat, nor for those who were with him, but only for the priest? Or have you not read the law of the Sabbath of the priest in the temple profane the Sabbath? And blameless, yet I say to you that in this place there is the one. There is one that is greater. I am the one is what He's saying. There's one in your midst that is greater than the temple. But if you had known what this means, I desire mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is the Lord even of the Sabbath." Look at me real fast. I want you to see something. Jesus did a whole lot of affirming and also jabbing right here. He literally jabbed at the disciples. He said it like this. As they said, "Hey, it's unlawful for your guys to work on the Sabbath, nor eating." They're plucking grain. They're harvesting on the Sabbath. And they're eating. No. This isn't how the Sabbath worked. Jesus said it like this. "Oh, maybe you guys have never read this part of the Bible." Stop. Time out. What you may not have picked up right there, that is the biggest jab ever. It would be like Roy, who's done heating and air for a long time. For me to go, "Oh, Roy, maybe you don't know a little bit about HVAC. Maybe I'll help you there." Then he'd be like, "I'm pretty sure I know what this is." Or to look at John, who runs a store, Dick's Sporting Goods, to go, "Oh, maybe you don't know how to run a store. Maybe you have no idea. That's what you've done your whole life." Daniel has been done graded run machine. "Oh, maybe you don't know how to run a machine." I know Daniel would be like, What'd you say? What did you just say about me?" That was the jab that he just gave. "Ike, maybe you don't know a little bit about concrete. Let me help you here for a minute, bud." It'd be like, Like he already has just jabbed at them. Maybe you haven't heard. Listen to what he does. As he jabs, he affirms, "I'm the one." At this jab, he also looks at the disciples, and I want you to picture this. I want you to see this. The disciples are here. They're following him and walking with him. That Jesus sees that they're watching. They're over here watching. He goes, "Hey guys, watch this." He knew what they're going to do. And all of a sudden he goes, "Maybe you don't know. Maybe you've not read about David. That is David, King David." Parallel there. Like King David, who was having to run for his life because someone was trying to kill him. Maybe that's familiar. Maybe you might not have read that on the day that he was having to do the work of the Lord as the king, even on the Sabbath, he had to figure out how to work on the run. Although he was justified and his men that were with him were justified to do it. Maybe you didn't read about that. And the Pharisees would have been like, "What do you think you are? Do you think you're greater than King David?" And Jesus goes, "Hey guys, rest in me. I am the King of Kings. I am the one." That when he jabbed at them and he said, "Maybe you never read about that the Pharisees, the prophets, the priests are having to work on the Sabbath. Maybe you Pharisees have never heard that. But maybe you don't know how the religious things work." Jab. Because what happens? The priests had to come in, and guess what they had to do on the Sabbath? Work. They had to build fires, keep fires going. They had to slay animals, right? And then put them on the altar and then serve the people. He said it like this. Hey guys, maybe they don't know that the priests had to work on the Sabbath. And it would cause them to go, "Wait, are you trying to say that you're greater than a priest?" And Jesus is looking at them going, "I am the high priest. I am the one. Rest in me. I am the high priest. I'm the one." That he's affirming and jabbing all in the same truth, going, "I'm the one." What we may not have picked up, I've never seen this until this week's reading, that he was affirming all throughout this week's reading the one question that John the Baptist asked. "I'm struggling to believe. Are you the one?" Jesus keeps going, guys, I'm the one. Guys, I'm the one. I'm the one. There's this place that he says, and I am the greater. He says, there is one greater than the temple. You got to know that the jab there was the value they put on the temple. How they loved the temple and how they cherished the temple. I want you to hear this truth. They would have known the temple and admired and loved it. Jesus is saying, admire and love me. They would have known that the temple was honored and it was a holy place. Jesus is saying, honor me. I am holy. They would have known the temple was a place of sacrifice and of service. Jesus would have said, I am more of a sacrifice. They would have known that the temple was a place to worship. Jesus would have said, I am the one that you're to worship. They would have known that people came to the temple to joyfully visit and joyfully surrender their life. Joyfully surrender. Submit your life. Find rest in me. I am greater. I'm the Lord of the Sabbath. I am the one. Which, side note, I have realized that it's going to be hard for me not to get on a lot of soapbox as I'm in this, because I'm staying just in the Word, because I'm crunching the numbers. I want to preach all 5 chapters. I want to. But I can't help but in this moment move away from the pulpit and just share my heart real quick about where I feel the church is if we're not careful. Is in this place where he said, maybe y'all didn't understand the saying, I desire mercy, not just sacrifice. Listen, there was a group of Pharisees that were standing there, and they prided themselves on what they did to sacrifice to make all the law work in their life. All the works they did and all they surrendered and sacrificed. If we're not careful as a church, this is where we are as a church. Because for so long, in a religious era, in a time where it was all about what you do and keeping the law, and understand and know that even the church created here today accidental Pharisees. That we spent more time telling people what they can't do and what they shouldn't do. That all of a sudden we created success in knowing God is that I stopped drinking, smoking, chewing, and running with those who do all that stuff, and stopped doing drugs, and I stopped pornography, and I stopped. Great, but look at me. There are people who sit every week in pews going, I did the work to stop doing all that sin, and then thump their chest as if they've done something. I need you to listen to me. That Jesus was saying, it's not what you stop doing, it's what I've called you to do. I'm calling you into something, not stopping something. Great, you have stopped some strongholds and some bondages. Great, but that was the work of the Spirit inside of you. No one has transformed anyone but me. I've transformed the work, and the transforming comes in you knowing me. That's the work. The soapbox I want to make sure that you hear me say is that this is not an area to go, success is stop sinning. Success is stop doing bad things. By the way, who's got that down pat yet? Anybody? It's that we do the work of knowing Him. And what comes from knowing Him? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. It's not what we've stopped doing. It's what's now produced in us in knowing Him. It's that when you get love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, love and mercy, here's what happens. You begin to see God's people differently. And that's why Jesus said, you've worked so hard to keep these rules. You've sacrificed, but you've missed the greater, which is giving mercy. End of soapbox, jump in, let's go. Matthew chapter 12, let's keep going. Jesus continues to affirm the very truth of Him saying, I'm the one. Matthew chapter 12, verse 9. Now when He had departed from there, He went into the synagogue, and behold, there was a man who had a withered hand. They asked Him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? That they might accuse Him. And He said to them, what man is there among you who has one sheep, and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will not lay hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable then is a man than a sheep? Therefore it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Then he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And he stretched it out, and he was restored as whole as the other. And the Pharisees went out and plotted against him so they may destroy him. Jesus exposed the hypocrisy, showing their greater concern of their own possessions than some man's need. Stop. I don't know where you are with your pets. This sheep part, this is not the pet part of it. Some of y'all, you let your pet kiss you in the mouth more than your spouse sometimes. Some of y'all love your pet more than people. I know that for a fact. Some of you have told me that. This is not that area, right? This is not going, listen. I see the pet thing, but this isn't the pet thing that he's trying to connect their heart. Having sheep represents possessions, value, something worth value. And Jesus is saying that you love and value your stuff more than the brokenness of this world. That he does this thing as the disciples are with him. It's happening again, that the Pharisees, the same one that he's answering the question to them and proving to them, he's saying, I need you to know something. I'm greater than anything that you possess. And I'll take the brokenness of people and I'll run to that. I'm not trying to raise up a bunch of people who have this wealth. I need you to have a wealth of brokenness, of mercy, of grace, of all of the fruits that I have. He says, I am the Lamb that's going to come to die. I'm the one. Jesus continues to affirm what he said to John the Baptist, to the multitude that heard it, to the disciples. I'm going to kind of repeat where we started this thing. When we have difficult situations, unmet expectations, and limited perspective of what God is doing, continue to believe and abide with joyful submission, resting in Him that God's got this. I'm the one. It doesn't make sense, guys. Keep following me. I'm the one. Do the work of believing. Matthew chapter 12, verse 22. Jesus healed a demon-possessed man that was blind and mute. He's saying, hey guys, rest in me. I'm greater than any demonic force from hell. I am the one. By the way, I wish we had time, for time's sake, to keep going through all the parables right here in Matthew chapter 13. Go to Matthew 14. I can't. I'll come back to Matthew 13 in a minute in closing. But I can't for time. We're going to have to jump to Matthew 14. I want you to keep seeing this that we're in. Matthew 14, we see John the Baptist still in prison by Herod. And while in prison, Herod is kind of tricked into killing John the Baptist and bringing his head on a platter. Matthew chapter 14, verse 12. Then the disciples came and took away the body of John the Baptist, buried it, and he went and told Jesus. By the way, guess who's with Jesus? The disciples. All right, stop. Can you imagine this? Can you get into the story with this? All of this happened. The beginning of Matthew chapter 11, John the Baptist goes, hey, are you the one? Jesus comes back and goes, you tell him, I'm the one. I'm the one that's fulfilling the prophecy. I'm the one I'm greater than King David. I'm greater. I'm the high priest. I'm the lamb's been slain. I am the Sabbath. I'm where you find rest. You tell him I'm the one. Don't you know the disciples are like, he's the one, guys. Keep following him. He's the one. He's the one. And all of a sudden somebody shows up. Their faith is up here watching God do all these miraculous works. And all of a sudden somebody comes back and goes, Jesus, they cut John the Baptist's head off and served it on a platter. Could you imagine the disciples going, he's the one, What happened? I would have been the disciple that had been like, oh, he's the one, all right, that served John's head on a platter. Oh, he's the one, all right. It would have been so easy in this moment because I had limited perspective of what God is doing. It's an upside-down kingdom that makes no sense to me. I would have had a tough situation to believe. If they're going to do that to John the Baptist, what will they do to me? And what did John the Baptist, by the way, get beheaded for? Speaking truth. That marriage is wrong. She got mad? I'll kill you. It makes you want to go, maybe I'm fearful to speak the truth in this world. Listen to me. It's in this very place that Jesus, and this is where we got to keep going, is Jesus He literally, it says in the Bible that he just went away. Could you imagine the doubt that's starting to creep back in the disciples going, huh? He goes away. There's a multitude that finds him, and he just continues. The same day, he just keeps continuing to minister. Matthew chapter 14, go with me, verse 14. And Jesus went out, saw a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion for them, and he healed their sick. And when it was evening, the disciples came to him saying, this is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the village and buy food for themselves. But Jesus said to them, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. We give them something to eat? This is Jesus challenging the faith of the disciples. Look at me. They have just heard John the Baptist is dead. Where do you think some of their faith went? His next thing was, let's talk about some faith, guys. You feed them. Look, I love their answer because they're like, huh? Verse 17, and they said to him, we have only 5 loaves and 2 fish. I doubt that our limited resource is going to be enough. Look at me. Has anybody ever felt that you're limited, and I doubt that God can do anything with the limit resource that I have, or the little that I possess? Jesus goes, that's the person I'd love to speak to right here in this moment. Verse 18, same here, right here, Matthew 14. Bring to me the little that you offer. By the way, I had to skip it. I didn't want to. Like, a little faith like a little mustard seed, chapter before. Or maybe a little bit of leaven. Bring to me the little faith that you have, and let me show you. He said, bring them to me. Then he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. Looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave the multitude. So they ate and were filled, and they took up 12 baskets full of the fragments that remained. Now those who had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides the women and children. By the way, you talking about affirming his oneness? Rest in me. I am the source. I'm the one. You can almost watch in the story that we read this week of faith is kind of like this right here. Bring your limited resource to me. Joyfully submit the little that you have, and watch what I do with it. Matthew chapter 14, verse 22. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get in a boat and go before him on the other side. And while he sent the multitude away, and when he had sent the multitude away, he went up the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there. But the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Look, limited perspective, difficult situations. There's a storm that just took place. Know that our faith is often tested in the absence of Jesus, right? When we don't feel him. Would you not agree that that's the place where we feel like our faith is tested? Jesus literally said, take off, guys. See you in a bit. He knows what he's pressing into. He knows the question that John the Baptist asked. Are you the one? He's pressed into now the disciples going, do you not believe that I'm the source? He now leads them into this place of going, I'm going to go away. You take off. By the way, have you ever felt like Jesus so far when you're in the middle of a storm? He seems so far. If you were to see the timeline of it was evening when Jesus separated from them, but when Jesus saw them, it was the 4th watch, middle of the night, and they're in the middle of the sea. I got to tell you, they've been fighting this storm for a while. I'm talking about these are men that knew water, and they are fighting for their life. Please hear me. We started this year with, I don't care what your week looks like, your month looks like. High highs or low lows. A lot of people in the Bible had high highs and low lows. Keep showing up. Keep doing the work. What is work? I keep asking this question. Is marriage work? Is parenting work? is abiding work, like pressing, pushing distractions aside. Keep doing the work. I need you to see them as they're literally in the midst of going, oh my goodness, we're gonna die. Jesus could have stepped in right when the storm started. Nope. You mean to tell me you watched me struggle all night? Yep. This is what causes me sometimes where my doubt kicks in going, you knew I was struggling. Could have stepped right in. I know. Because with every time that you're growing, the fear is growing. And listen, we're going somewhere with this, so please don't miss this. Jesus sees you in your struggle. Don't stop now. The work is to believe, to abide, to follow. Yes, Jesus sees you struggling, and He goes to us. Matthew chapter 14, verse 25. Now on the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. When the disciples saw Him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, it's a ghost. And they cried out with fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, be of good cheer, it is I. I'm the one. It is I. Don't be afraid. Peter answered and said, Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water. And He said, come. This is the second time in this week's reading we see Jesus say, come to me. All who doubt, come to me. All who fear, come to me. All who lack resources, come to me. All who are struggling, come to me. I'm the one. Where else will you go? I'm the one. Come to me. Jesus calls, come to me. And in this calling to come, He gives, with the call to come, the power to fulfill this. Look at just this week's reading. Matthew 12:13. Jesus said to the man with the withered hand, do the work. Stretch forth your hand. Look, we understand and know that there's a part of me that if there was this crippled man, and it's so crippled, you see he can't do anything about it. And when Jesus would have said, stretch forth your hand, I would have been like, don't do that to him. Not in front of everybody. Because I have limited perspective of who God is often. That looks like a troubled situation. He's had that for a really long time. He said, I'm calling you to do the work. You do the physical, I'll do the spiritual. I'll do the miraculous. He said, come to me with your little bit of fish and a little bit of bread. Come to me with it. He blessed it and He put it back in their hands. There wasn't baskets and baskets full of it. It was the limited resource given back to them. You've heard us talk about this before. Could you imagine for a minute? Could you imagine just for a second? As they begin to pass it, the first person would have got like, sorry, hope you don't like fish. We ain't got a lot. By the time I would have made it back over here, again, we don't know exactly how it happened, but it's all still there. I feel like I'd have circled back and be like, my bad, I cheated you, my bad. Because as they did the work of believing, and as they did the physical, God began to do the spiritual. When He asked Peter to step out of the boat, can't walk on water. You do the physical, I'll do the spiritual. Matthew chapter 14, He says, come. Come to me, Peter. And when Peter got out of the boat, began to walk on the water to go to Jesus, when he saw that the wind was boisterous, he was afraid and began to sink and cry out, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched out His hand, caught him, and He said to him, O you of little faith, why do you doubt? And when he got in the boat, the wind ceased, and those who were in the boat came and worshiped Him, saying, you are truly the one. You are truly the Son of God. Look, have you caught it in this week's reading? The ups and the downs of doubt and faith and belief, fears and faith. Anybody else's spiritual walk ever looked like that? that it's ever looked like. It goes from a high to a where are you, Jesus? Surely you can't be in this moment of pain. Surely you're not in the midst of this. I love this part. Oh, you of little faith, listen to me. From the original question of Matthew chapter 11, are you the one? I got some doubts because of what I see and where I'm at. Are you the one? Jesus is affirming all through this week's reading, I'm the one. I'm the one. Though it makes no sense, all you see is a storm, all you see is pain, all you see is prison, God sees the beautiful surrender. I asked Wes and Lindsay to bring me this. Anybody seen cross-stitching? You ever seen the backside of it? I love this visual. You've maybe probably seen this visual. But oftentimes what God is asking to do, He's asking because this is how we see it oftentimes. We see life dimly. We see it in such a way that it doesn't make a lot of sense. I can't tell from that side exactly what this is. And He's saying, trust me. It's not what it looks like. It's not what you see, because from my view, it's beautiful. From my view, it all makes sense. But from my view, I see pain. From my view, I see brokenness. From my view, I'm still struggling. Remember, we don't have God's view. We are not the miraculous. He is. He's asking us when you don't see it, John. When you don't see it, Peter. When you don't see it, church, I'm asking you to keep coming to me. Come to me. Seek me. Go with me back to Matthew chapter 13. Verse 44. What do we do when we struggle with doubt? What do we do when we struggle with fears? What do we do when it doesn't make sense and we've prayed and we've asked and we've prayed and we asked and I still have pain and you still haven't answered the question? What do we do? And again, the kingdom of heaven, verse 44 of chapter 13. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field, which a man found and he hid, and for joy over it goes and sells all that he has and buys the field. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant seeking beautiful pearls, who when he had found one pearl of great price, he went and sold all that he had and he bought it. Look at me. Jesus is of supreme value. What do we do when it doesn't make sense? Keep seeking Him. Keep coming to Him. Jesus is so valuable that the loss of everything on earth is what He says here in this parable. I'm so valuable that if you lost everything in order to get me, be happy. John the Baptist, be blessed. The last words that he said to his cousins, the last words that he said to one of the greatest preachers, the last words that he said, be blessed, be happy, walk in joy, because if you lose your head, you've gained it all. If you lose everything, it may not make sense on this side of heaven, but I promise you, you will see I was valued and greatly worth. Knowing that God is the one, no matter how painful, He is an ultimate value. Even in the loss of everything, He is everything. Jesus was saying that I'm the one that's greater than the temporary pain. I'm the one that's greater than even death. He is worth it. But how many of you, though, sought after Him, believed He's the one, only to find yourself imprisoned, in a bondage, in a struggle, in pain, in Him not meeting a need? And look at me. You go elsewhere to search for happiness, for joy. That you've gone elsewhere to numb the pain. He said, there's nothing. There was a merchant who'd spent his whole life seeking, searching, but once he found the greatest value, he said, joyfully will I sell it all. Because nothing I've gained, as Paul said, is worth Jesus Christ. What have you spent your life looking for? What are you searching for? God, if having money draws me closer to you, then I'll take it. But if having money robs me of you, make me poor. God, if having a struggle or a trial or pain or brokenness or a physical ailment or sin all the days of my life causes me to cling to you and keep seeking you, then bring the pain. Bring whatever it takes, God, that I would not miss you. Jesus said with joy that the merchant gave everything to in return have God. So to John the Baptist, to the disciples, to us, Jesus is the one. Keep searching. Keep seeking. I might have Luke come around. When your faith is broken, when fear is greater than faith, when it makes no sense, when life for you looks like this, trust and believe that God is the one that sees the perfected. This thing is not perfection, it's progression. It's keep seeking. Don't stop now because you don't understand it. Don't stop now because there's been pain. Don't stop now because it makes no sense. Keep seeking, keep searching. The question that I'm going to ask you is, will you weigh your life this morning? Will you see what's truly of value of your life? See where your faith really is. Will you see this morning, what are you spending most of your time searching for? What's the thing that you're looking for to speak a truth over that fear? There's an insecurity, there's a rejection, there's a brokenness. What are you looking towards to fill that? Whatever it is, he says right here, I'm the one. John the Baptist said, what should I search? Should I look for something else? Jesus said, no, I'm the one. Everybody in this room, look at me. I don't know what you're searching for, but he's the one. May we, for the rest of our life, commit to buying the field. It will cost you everything, but you gain the one. Luke's going to come around, and here's what I'm going to ask you to do. These altars are open. I'm not going to tarry long with asking and begging. I just need you to know we've already laid the foundation. This year we started the year with going, this should not be awkward. Altar is not awkward. Somehow, some way the church has made the altar for the broken. Anybody in this room perfect? The altar is for every one of us. It's the place that we hear the word and respond. It's the place that some begin to move in the physical towards him and he begins to do the work in the spiritual. But listen to me, it's not about the altar. God's presence is no more here than it is where you are. I ask every one of you in this moment to press into where you are or right here in the altar, because people would love to pray with you. Have you committed and devoted your life to seek the one? Through the pain, through the trial. Where is your confidence? Do you have a greater value of your possessions than what the need is for this world that God's wanting to use you for? It's not about the song that Luke's playing. It's about this moment that you press in. So with every head bowed and eyes closed, these altars are open for anyone. Father, we press into your presence right now. You did not call your house to be a house of just singing, a house of preaching. You said that this is to be a house of prayer. May the house of God return to what you created it to be, a house of prayer. May it be that we have now heard your word and we commit to pursuing your truth. As the song is played in closing, I ask if you want to move, we'd love to pray with you, or right where you are. Church, take a few moments and press in. In response to the word, what is the Holy Spirit speaking and revealing to you through his word today? He is the one. He is life over death. He is the high priest. He is the King of kings. He is the rest of the Sabbath. He is the source. He's the one. Press into the one this morning.